Hi yogis, it's Jackie. I'm just here to make a quick video for you in preparation for our class tomorrow. Erin and I at Evolve are doing a 7-week chakra journey with our classes, so each week we're focusing on one chakra. Last week was the Muladhara chakra, which is the root chakra, and this week we'll be focusing on the second chakra, Svadhisthana, which translates into sweetness, and that is the sacral chakra. So tomorrow will be the first class to commence that chakra, and I thought I would just make this video because I have a lot of information to share and want to be able to give you some good preparation information for that, although we'll review all of these aspects tomorrow in class as well. So the sacral chakra is located in the sacral area of the body, being the lower abdomen, right above the root. So it's the pelvic region where the root lies in the pelvic region, but the sacral chakra lies just above that. The physical elements of the body that are associated with this chakra are the abdomen, the genitals, the lower back, and the hips. So if that gives you any indication of what we're going to be doing tomorrow, let it. The sacral chakra really has to do with sexuality, emotions, desire, fluidity, movement, all of these things, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of them. We're talking about self-gratification with the sacral chakra in our lives. This chakra is developed between the ages of 6 months and 2 years. And so if you think about our developmental progression through life, there's certain times in that development where we are really honing in on or creating and developing certain areas of our being or aspects of ourselves. So if you think about the root chakra as like trust versus mistrust, the sacral chakra really has to do with feelings, emotions, the ability to express, and that's okay. So if we live in a home or a society that represses the ability to express and to feel and to create and move, that sacral area of the body is going to be impacted, and vice versa. If our sacral area of our body is deficient, we might feel repressed or unable to move, we feel shut down, rigid, too contained, and vice versa. If we have over emotion, overreaction, an inability to really contain some of our feelings, then that is an excess of this of energy in the sacral chakra. So we're talking about energy systems, and that our chakras can either be deficient, balanced, or in excess. And so we think of when they're imbalanced by what's happening within our body and around us in our lives. So I want to talk a little bit about fluidity and movement in relation to the sacral chakra. So if you think of the root as the container, the root chakra is the most physical chakra of the 7, as they become lighter and more ethereal as it moves up the body. So the root is the container, it is the most dense. The sacral then is the second most dense, but it is lighter than the first. And so if you think about a glass of water, the container is the root chakra, and the water within the glass is the fluid, that is the sacral chakra. So if you think of water and fluidity, it's movement. Although water is still pretty dense, it has more of an ability to move than the root chakra. So the root is really our base, and that is where we start progressing with healthy, balanced chakras by creating a strong, healthy foundation, solid, so that we feel contained and safe enough to create some fluidity and movement within the body. So I can shake up a glass, say a container of water with a lid. I can shake it up more and move it more if I know that the water isn't going to spill out. Now, if my glass is broken and cracked, I'm probably not going to shake up the container, because then, the water might come spilling out. And so as we move through the progression of the 7 weeks and the 7 chakras, notice how the base, the one before, sets up the one that comes next and above. So the sacral chakra, the aspect of this chakra is to feel. We talk about our emotions, pleasure, desires, and our needs. And it also has to do with our emotional identity. So how we feel, how we experience our emotions, express our emotions. And with this, the kind of demon of the sacral chakra is guilt. So we have guilt that we feel that is healthy guilt, and that we know when we are making choices that are beyond the scope of our morals or ethics, and then there's unhealthy guilt, where we feel, if I eat a piece of chocolate cake for my birthday, and I'm usually pretty healthy and don't eat a lot of sugar or eggs or whatever, if I feel completely guilty because of eating that one piece of chocolate cake, that might tell me or signify to me that I might be pretty rigid in my willingness to move, and there's rigidity, and then there's over excess. So when we're deficient, we're rigid, we are repressed, and when we're excess, it is all over the place. We're overreactive, a ton of emotions everywhere, and so we work on balancing those kind of polar opposites and becoming balanced. The element associated with the sacral chakra is water, and the color is orange. We're either over emotional or really rigid, and it's really important with the sacral chakra to seek to find our senses, because we don't exactly know what we want if we're not willing to sense and then even more so feel. So if somebody comes and gives me a hug, how does that feel in my body? How do I experience that? First of all, does it feel good on my body? And then am I feeling good with that touch? Am I feeling loved and cared for and nurtured, or do I become froze up and scared and uncomfortable? And so this is also a really good indication of where sacral chakra is at. So by even just starting to hear some of these aspects of the sacral chakra, we can relate it to in our younger years, how we were taught about feeling both emotionally as well as physically. And that is why the sacral chakra is related to both sexuality and emotions. And sexuality doesn't have to do just with sex and, if you think about making love in a physical aspect, but the willingness to be vulnerable and kind of open oneself up to the world and to the relationships around you. So it does not only mean the physical aspect of sex, but it's also the aspect of desire with many different things in your lives, including relationships as well as other pieces. So I have notes because I just have a lot to share. So we talked a little bit about pleasure versus guilt, and the thing with pleasure and knowing what we enjoy, it helps indicate to us what we want to work for. So I go teach a yoga class. I really enjoy that. I get pleasure out of teaching a yoga class. That tells me, that indicates to me that I want to continue doing that in my life. So what I want to manifest in my life is indicative of what I find to enjoy now. So it's really important that we get in touch with our senses and our feelings in order to know what we want to do as we move forward. So having a desire, if we didn't have desires and wants in our life, how we would become stagnant. There would be no movement forward. So desire it propels us to move forward in our life, gives us some purpose and some drive. And so that is why desire is not something to be condoned and dismissed, and not being completely selfless, but not being too selfish either. So again, there's that container, and that's that balance. To think about the physical aspects in our asana practice tomorrow, I'd like you to really focus on what the body feels like in certain poses. So we're going to do a variety of both fluid movement as well as containment. And I want you to notice what's happening to the body in certain poses. Is there tightening of the jaw? Are you holding on to tension? Because typically when we hold on to our emotions, our body tightens up. So think of a time where you were in somewhere where you weren't able to fully express your emotions. So say you wanted to cry and you stopped yourself from crying. The chest tightens up, the body tightens up, the jaw may tighten up. You get really rigid in the body. And so when we release the body through our asana practice, this is a tool to surrender and let go of the emotional tension as well that's in our body, and vice versa. When we allow the emotional aspects of ourselves to release, then our physical body will release as well. So this is why through an asana practice, when you get on your mat, it is not just a physical activity, but you really have no choice but to allow your body, your body instinctually will begin to heal itself when you get on your mat. So if you come to the mat, if you come to your yoga class in order to get a six-pack abs and great arms and all of that, that's wonderful. That's a beautiful thing. And what's great about that, even if you're not conscious of it, your body will begin to heal emotionally and spiritually as well. Because when we access the self through the body, we're accessing all the other pieces as well, the emotional, the spiritual, and so on. Now, when you come to your mat and you have an awareness to be able to access the emotions, like I know when I go to my mat, when I release my body, I'm releasing my emotions. When you have more awareness of that, it's just that much more intense, because then you can go onto your mat with intention and dedication and more discernment of what's happening with yourself and in your life. And that is why yoga is not just a physical practice on a mat in a room for 1 hour. It bleeds into your entire world off your mat as well, and that is what makes yoga so different, so unique, and so beautiful all at the same time. I'm going to talk a little bit about the shadow. And the shadow is that part of ourself that we don't acknowledge, that we repress and shut out. And typically, I know for some of you maybe who followed my judgment, my journey of non-judgment, this is really interesting to think about, because when we become judgmental in our lives, typically, so if I see somebody who is over emotional and I become really irritated and I don't even want to be around that person, that's probably because I am not willing to allow myself to be emotional. So this is the aspect of polarity and duality, which is a big thing in yoga. In our asana practice, you think of a handstand, you're pressing into the mat, into the earth, yet at the same time you're pulling up through the muscles of your legs. So this is that duality, this expansion that we experience in our asana practice. That's duality, in where too we're expanding our arms and our legs and finding expansion in the hips, yet we're bringing the inner thighs in towards one another to find buoyancy. So it's this expansion, yet this lift up in the center, and that's duality in our physical practice. So that we also have duality in our emotional body, in our emotional lives, and that is really the aspect of balance. Okay, so handstand. a balancing posture, right? You have to balance on your hands, and you're not going to be able to balance effectively if you're not acknowledging and creating that duality in your body. Emotionally, we need to be able to be emotional without being overly emotional. And that is duality. And that can become really frustrating because we're constantly moving back and forth, back and forth. How do I obtain that? How do I obtain that? And maybe, just maybe one day, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I got this. I got handstand, or I got this. I finally get it, what's happening with me and my friend, and I'm totally okay and content with it. And you must have moved through something in your body and in your mind and emotions where you're able to find that balance, and that is duality. And so when we hide the shadow of ourselves, say for instance emotionality, if I'm a person who wants to present very strong and non-emotional, the being emotional is the shadow that I'm hiding, and the longer that I keep it tucked underneath, the more intense it's going to show up in my life. So if I hide that emotion, typically, so I'm becoming polarized, I'm becoming too rigid, too non-emotional. Life, the universe, will automatically bring emotionality into our lives. So probably, if I'm being under-emotional, I'm going to have emotionality come to my life. An angry driver right next to me, a neighbor who is being really emotional or extroverted, a boss who is requiring a lot of you, or kind of poking at that emotionality in your body. And so these are indicators, and these are all things that we should observe without judgment. So if I notice that I'm becoming polarized because these things are, I'm feeling judgmental towards someone, I shouldn't get down on myself and feel overly guilty for that. I should just observe that non-judgmentally and look at where I need to maybe come back this way, come back to being a little bit more emotional in my life and allow that to happen, or look at why I'm being non-emotional. And then, of course, guilt is the prison guard of the shadow because, if I get emotional, all of a sudden I feel guilty and it shuts that shadow back down. So you really have to watch how you experience guilt in your life when you start to find balance, because typically you're uncomfortable with the shadow coming back in, and guilt is going to be the prison guard that says, "Whoop, you're out of your cage, get back in." And so we have to notice when we feel guilty and go, okay, that's just the prison guard. He's just wanting to push that shadow back, but I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to remind myself that guilt, it's okay. This prisoner can be released. You don't have to be so rigid towards him, and then it can come back into your life. And then that prison guard is also really important, sometimes important too, because then maybe if we get too over emotional, then it's like, okay, we have to bring this back a little bit. So the aspect of duality is holding tension between. So this is also going to be something we'll practice in our asana practice tomorrow, is being able to hold the tension between moving pre-pose or coming right into the pose and then transition. So it's that period of transition that can we hold the tension in between and be surrender to it and not have to move completely forward as fast as we can, but not stay stagnant in the past or, back here. So we're finding movement, yet finding balance. So to heal the sacral chakra, we encourage the excess or the deficiency to come more towards the center. And so if we're in excess, we move it towards the center. And if we're deficient, we move it towards the center, whatever that may be in your life. Diet, emotions, relationships, your asana practice, whatever it may be, your meditation practice, any of these things. So when movement is in excess, we are learning to contain it. And when we are deficient, we learn to move it. And so this requires paying attention to the subtleties within our life. So disclaimer here, if you're inviting this into your life, be prepared for a wild ride, because you're probably going to feel uncomfortable when we start to really delve into these chakras and exploring them. I'm almost done. So freeing the stream while giving it a safe container to move in will promote healing. So if you think of a flood, a river, and a drought, the drought is deficient, the flood is excess, and we work on containing it appropriately, and we have this beautiful manifestation of nature. And that's what we want to find within ourselves, is this manifestation, the same similarities to nature, and that we always work to balance. You'll even find in nature, in our world, the earth, she knows when she is unbalanced, and you will find either when she's in excess will move back. But it's this kind of constant state of moving back and forth, and that's getting comfortable with the transition and finding balance. One more note: fight, flight, or freeze. This is something that how we experience life. This is the reptilial, the instinctual brain. We fight, flight, or freeze. We fight, we run away, or we completely freeze. And the sacral chakra is working to either find movement when we're freezing, or to find containment when we're running away, or fighting, and just to find that balance. So we work on these chakras purposely from root to crown, from the most physical to the most ethereal, and that's to set ourselves up for optimal healing. So we've worked on the root, now we're going to work on the sacral chakra. We have the container, we're going to move to fluidity in order to really embrace power, compassion, creativity, insight, and awareness, which are the next 5 chakras after this. So I hope you come to class. I hope to see you tomorrow. It's going to be hopefully a practice for what you need. There's going to be a little bit of both as far as the polarities in order to find balance. So wherever you might be at, there will be something for you in the asana practice. And I hope you really start to embrace this journey of chakra healing. It can be a very powerful experience, and the rewards are magnificent. So although the journey might be a little rough sometimes, it is worth it, I assure you. And also a note that tomorrow starts our month-long, if you make it to if you practice at Evolve for 20 days out of the month, it's about 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week, but at least 20 days in the next month, you may be eligible for an unlimited pass in the month of July. So make sure to ask us about that tomorrow, and I will see you then. So to you, I only wish healing in the highest form. Namaste.